The only people I know that got into pickup and stayed in pickup were just kind of like the bottom of the barrel, really weird guys in the first place, who don't really understand how weird it is. Tactics aren't really going to work unless you have a solid sort of framework of who you are as a person and you have decent values, and otherwise you're just, it's just weird and it's creepy.
But first, a word from our sponsors.
Dogecoin to the moon? Ready to buy the dip? Start investing in cryptocurrency today with Coinbase. And you can get $10 worth of Bitcoin for free after signing up at manwhorepod.com/crypto. Come on, how much longer is this fiat thing gonna last? Dick wipes. Yes, I am telling you about Promescent's new dick wipes. These wipes will help you last longer in bed and take up no more space than a condom. Buy Promescent's new Delay Wipes today at Promescent, PROMESCENT.com. Now let's get to the show.
Welcome to the Man Whore Podcast.
Shout out to the freaks, the geeks, and all the theater nerds in the sheets. This is Billy Procida, and you are listening to the Man Whore Podcast. This week on the show, everybody, I have got on dating strategist and coach Robbie Kramer. He's the founder of Inner Confidence, and he hosts the Leverage podcast, a show I was on myself this week. You should go check it out after you're done with this one. This was a surprisingly awesome conversation. And I only say surprisingly because Robbie, is a guy who teaches guys how to connect with women, and that will always make me suspect. But Robbie and I had a really fantastic talk. Looking forward to sharing that with you all in a little bit. So this relationship with Wallet Note Lady, as those of you who follow me on Instagram know her, it has surprised me in terms of what I'm capable of. Been thinking a lot about it. Traditionally, I've not thought about my future too much. It's always some hopefully improved version of what I do today, talking about sex and love and making people giggle, sometimes showing my dick for money, some version of that. Being a professional poor person, busting his ass to tiptoe the line of lower middle class always prevented me from looking too far into the future when it comes to like what I want in relationships. In terms of children, I always think about how I'm trying to support myself $1, $2 Patreon pledge at a time. So how on earth could I even contemplate supporting another human being? In terms of marriage or long-term relationships, I've never made it even 2 years with a woman. I figured I should know how we both celebrate a leap year before I start wondering about joining bank accounts. That's why I was so surprised when she and I discussed fluid bonding and her lack of birth control at the time. And I was thinking then, this would be the least worst person to have a surprise kid with. Like, I could see it, people. Hopefully not right now. But like I can see it all at some unknown future point, and it doesn't freak me out like it used to. Even last week, I could see it. I saw her in my mind's eye. I saw her pregnant, and she looked incredible. I saw us in a home bigger than my studio or her co-op, and it was ours. I saw us older, not old, but older, and thriving in threesomes and beach trips and looking at each other like light bulbs shine behind our faces. I saw her advanced in her career and me cheerleading her rise up the academia ladder, and her published in books and journals with widespread respect among her colleagues. Yeah, that part surprised me because it wasn't me with a Netflix show I was picturing. It wasn't me touring stand-up or doing sex ed workshops. It wasn't me launching my book. It was her at the center, being the star. Don't get me wrong, I still want to make it in bigger ways, but in this future world filled with Post-it notes in my wallet, I was shockingly content supporting her in her career and in our life together. Fucking weird to imagine after 6 months. fucking weird for me to imagine, period. I mean, Paige and I contemplated the concept of moving in together in the months before we broke up, but that's the most that it's ever gone for me. I was never a guy worth thinking of the future with because I've barely been a guy worth sharing your heart with. This is even after I slowed myself down earlier this year and I tried like taking this relationship at a cautious pace because I've been trying to like be, responsible with my heart. Until she told me, love bomb me. She was like, don't hold back. She told me to unlearn whatever I think I've been learning about healthier dating practices over the past decade. So fuck it. I let myself love the idea of having an our bed to come home to, even if it wasn't our bed yet. That's why when she broke up with me last week, it didn't feel like my other breakups. I wasn't being punished for an egregious behavior. It wasn't not working out. It wasn't losing just someone. I mean, I was losing a future life we both fantasized about. An entire future of potentials dropped in a moment like GameStop stock, steeply and suddenly, and Kramer on CNBC was saying, I told you so. I can't tell you why we're breaking up. I have theories, but this all doesn't make much sense to me. This feels cosmically wrong. This feels like a focal point in the multiverse where like a new branch veers off, creating who knows what parallel reality where Matt Damon is Spider-Man. I'm still pretty fucking raw right now. About a week later, I gotta tell you that that first day I could feel my organs and muscles floating inside of my skin, and there was no ground beneath my feet. Even as I record this right now, like my nerves, they register physical sensations, but my heart cavity feels cavernous. And if you shouted into it, there would definitely be an echo. I was hoping to avoid some kind of dramatic life update here with what went wrong or with how shattered I feel or some sort of dwelling on it, some sort of soliloquy. I know this is almost 5 minutes, but that's pretty short for me if you're new to the show. So I don't know. You're getting this for now. Andrea Allen and I might do like a breakup episode kind of thing, TBD. I know my whole thing is letting you all eavesdrop on my sex and love life, but this one feels a very different sort of way. Maybe I should like take a beat before unloading it all on a podcast. I don't know. I'm just trying to learn from these 400 plus episodes. Even if it denies my listeners, for now, the next chapter of this story, and if this part of the story is truly done, I don't know. I think the whole quest for love thing might be over. Might be time to change the subtitle a little bit, because there's a bar set with this one. I don't want to like have to go date 5, 10, 20 other women just to like find out what I already know. It's her. I know that. And I promise I tried to be as skeptical with myself as possible. But it's her. So we'll see. This is going to be kind of weird transitioning into a fan whore appreciation moment, but let's go ahead and do it because you know what? She deserves her shout out. Not wallet, no lady, this lady. So this is a part of the podcast. I like to give a shout out to a member or two of the fan whore community on Patreon. And I want to say thank you to all my members for being so kind and supportive. A lot of you knew and know what was going on there. So and you all reached out privately with some very kind words. I appreciate that. But I also want to thank Sarah Hidji. I'm very much looking forward to seeing a little bit more of you and your husband getting into it in the Peep Show because, nothing makes me get over missing the loving, intimate, powerful sex that I was having with my now ex than to see other couples have their intimate, hard pounding, crying into each other's arms. Is this getting sad? I'm sorry. Sarah, you've been a wonderful new member of the community. Love seeing you popping up in the champagne room in the Peep Show. We are happy to have you. And you too can support the work I'm doing here with the Man Whore podcast on Patreon. Get your own shout out, get your own perks. Join us in the Peep Show. You can become a member today for as little as $2 at patreon.com/manwhorepodcast. That's Patreon, patreon.com/manwhorepodcast. You know, last week I read an advice email from a fella who was struggling in a situationship of sorts. And something that stuck out to me in his email to me that he was like, yeah, and like your show is helping me embrace my inner slut. And I get very nervous when I hear cishet men or men who like primarily fuck women tell me how excited they are to hear a slutty guy talking on the internet about his stories, about his encounters, and how it's letting them be like, I can be slutty too. And I think they kind of miss a lot of stuff in between. And then it makes me very nervous that I am accidentally sending off boy whores into the world without like a lot of the sex positivity and the grounding in respect and concern for your partner parts of this all, the decentering yourself to prioritize the wants and needs and boundaries of others. I get very nervous when y'all write me and be like, yeah, I'm like a man whore too. And I'm like, ooh, I think we use that word very differently, sir. So I say all that to say my conversation with Robbie Kramer was really thoughtful. It's not dissimilar to my chat with dating coach Connell Barrett earlier this year, which I know there were a lot of mixed feelings about, both good and bad. And so when you're listening to Robbie and I chat, I hope you just don't hear this as license to indiscriminately fuck bitches, so to speak. As my friends at Multiamory will say, don't weaponize this shit. Just make sure when you're embracing your inner man whore, like make sure you're also embracing responsibility and empathy and emotional consideration for those women you're banging, sometimes even at the cost of yourself. This is not all just a map to pussy. This is a map to a way of thinking about sexuality. Anyways, Robbie Kramer, really good episode. I did a recording of his show, Leverage Podcast. That's also out this week. I'll have a link in the show notes. But after you're done listening to me interview Robbie, you should go listen to Robbie, interview me. And with that, going to do a couple of ad reads. We're going to go chat with Robbie Kramer. Everyone wants to be better in bed. Well, except for selfish jerks and most asexuals. But you probably want to be better in bed, right? You're not like that guy in the oral sex auditions episode who he said he was a sex god even though he totally wasn't. That's why I've been telling you all about Promescent. Their delay spray and delay wipes are must-haves if you have a penis or you have a penis in your life and that penis comes a little sooner than you'd like. Maybe that penis gets so close to getting the job done the way you want to and it doesn't make it there. Because I'm not talking about premature ejaculation. Which this product is great for them too. Their new dick wipes, they're perfect for that person in the 3 to 5 minute range who want to go 10 minutes and beyond. Plus, a box of them make for great stocking stuffers. I'm looking at you, Polly Pockets. Get 1 or 2 big boxes. You got wipes for everybody. Come on now, this is a no-brainer. Load up your cart with any of their premium sexual wellness products. Condoms, lubes, massage gels, any of that for a better night with the person or persons you spend it with. Visit Promescent.com to be better in bed today. Or like whenever the shipment comes into your door. Again, that's Promescent, Promescent.com. And let them know the Man Whore Podcast sent you. Motor Bunny has been a long-time sponsor of the Man Whore Podcast. We love them. They love me. Wunderbar. The Motor Bunny, if you don't know, it's a super powerful ride-on-top vibrator that you can crank all the way to 11. You got to be a certain age, I think, to get that reference. You can crank this thing up until your pussy is numb or just to see how much your ass can take. Or, hey, the lower levels are plenty strong but pleasant vibration themselves. Hey, the first time I opened a Motor Bunny, I sat on it, so I had the Motor Bunny in me. Then my girlfriend at the time, she straddled me. I'm in her. It's in me. She could feel my cock vibrating inside of her through the vibrations in my ass. I mean, if that's not power, I don't know what it is you're looking for. And now their newest addition, the Motor Bunny Buck, adds a thrusting element to the entire game. Thrusting? Yeah. fuck machines. We are selling fuck machines for you and your loved ones this holiday season, and you can get a special Man Whore podcast discount when you use promo code MANWHORE at motorbunny.com. So and I forgot to tell you this. Yes, this is a pricier item, but you can finance it. Delicious. I love the idea of paying your phone bill, paying your utility bill, paying your vibrator bill. Adult shit. So get your Motor Bunny or Motor Bunny buck today at manwhorepod.com/motorbunny or use promo code manwhore at checkout. Now let's get to the show.
The idea was originally like leverage your social skills to have other points of like leverage in your everyday life. Like if you're really good socially, that could impact your business, that could impact obviously your relationships, your finances. So what my idea was kind of going in that direction, but I agree, it's a shitty name.
I don't think it has to be shitty. It just maybe needs a subtitle.
It could.
Like I'm producing this podcast, The Joy of Text. Now, do you know what that's about? Yeah, exactly. But, we throw on a subtitle on there, The Joy of Text, where real sex meets Jewish law. And boom, now we know what the show's about. That's all.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, the underneath or somewhere, at least on the logo, it doesn't say it on the logo. I should add it. It says dating and lifestyle advice that doesn't suck. But I should add that. I should add that more.
I like that idea where because I also agree that one should go with what they're sincerely good at. Like if you're funny, be funny. But if you're not funny, don't try to be funny. Mm-hmm. It gets real bad. You'd have to be so bad that it comes back around and then becomes funny. And you don't want to fuck around with that. Because if you fail at it, it's just fucking not.
It's really dangerous. I run into that problem all the time because, guys will come to me with advice for how to be better with women. One of the first things I usually find on the internet is you need to be funny or you need to be, flirty or charming. And I'm like, don't even try. Just be normal and be cool and don't try to be funny because you're going to fail. And a lot of them just won't listen. They're like, no, I have to be. I'm like, okay, good luck.
No, you don't understand. These bits are amazing. Okay, it's all in the delivery. Hey, these are great bits. They just all happen to rely on racial stereotypes. They're going to do great. But this is probably a good time to say I'm here right now with dating coach and strategist Robbie Kramer. Hello, sir.
What's up, Billy? Great to be here.
Yes, nice to be talking again after doing your show yesterday. And we talked about this on your show that there are a lot of dudes or people, a lot of people want to, date better. And I think there's this obsession, especially amongst men, where it's what's the thing I need to be to get pussy? And it's I don't know, try being yourself. And if yourself sucks, then make yourself better. And I think naturally you find that people are attracted to people who are bettering themselves. Who'd have thought it?
Yeah. It's funny because when I was 22 or 23, when I got into personal development, if someone would have told me you should get into personal development, I would be like, that's fucking stupid. Why would I do that? I just want to make money and do other stuff. But when I heard about guys, teaching other guys how to pick up women, I was like, oh, well, that's interesting because that's a straightforward sort of goal that I want. I wanted to meet girls. I wanted to go out, I wanted to get laid, all that stuff. But what ended up happening was the horrible pickup shit that I got, unfortunately bombarded with, found my way into personal development. And the personal development stuff is actually what allowed me to transform and have the success I wanted. But there was no way I was going to start with that just because it wasn't a cool guy thing to do.
Yeah. And, to put my cards on the table, I tend to be skeptical of people like you. Anyone who markets to men on how to pick, or really anyone who markets to any one gender on how to pick up a specific gender. I'm always looking at you what's going on over here? And, I think I tend
As you should be. as you should be, because the vast majority of people who teach this stuff are just trying to make money. They're basically like there's an audience of people who don't know what they're doing, who can easily be scammed because they don't know what they're doing. They don't know who's the authority, who to listen to, because there's no like central agency governing who's giving quality advice and who's not. So any asshole with a mouthpiece can just start spewing dating advice, and if you don't know what you're doing, you might just believe it. And it's just an industry that's riddled with marketing people or other people that are just trying to scam you. So you should be skeptical.
Well, I'm glad my skepticism is somewhat well placed. I think a lot of people don't realize that a high quality webcam is only like $60-$80. You don't have to be approved to make it look and sound good and then just say whatever the fuck you want. That's how InfoWars started. They were like, let's just put a bomb third chyron and we'll look like the news and then they'll treat us like the news. But yeah, so I had some skepticism typically about that stuff. And then I've learned through having a lot of these conversations that there are a lot of people who come into the dating coach world from the pickup world. Like some of y'all grow a conscience and realize, oh, there's a more ethical way to do this. And in learning about that, I learned that even within pickup artistry, there are modes of thought that have more to do with the inner work and self-improvement than the pickup.
The only people I know that got into pickup and stayed in pickup were just kind of like the bottom of the barrel, really weird guys in the first place who don't really understand how weird it is. Maybe people like on the autism spectrum that just don't have like a filter for some of that stuff. But almost everyone that I encountered that was normal who came across the pickup stuff was like, yeah, okay, whatever. Maybe some of that can be useful, but it's just tactics. And tactics aren't really going to work unless you have, a solid sort of framework of who you are as a person and you have decent values, and otherwise you're just, it's just weird and it's creepy. And that's what I found when I got into it. Someone was like, yeah, you got to read this book called The Game. And I was like, what is it? He's like, oh, it's like the Bible on how to pick up chicks. And it looked like a Bible. And I was like, I'm not going to read that. And he's like, dude, trust me, just read it. And he was just like a golf buddy of mine in college. So I read it, and it was like incredibly, like you couldn't put it down. It was just totally fascinating to read. And I went out and I tried a couple of the silly lines in there and actually took home a girl the first time I approached. So I was like, okay, this is kind of interesting. I can't believe that worked. Went up to a girl that I had seen earlier we were at a house party, but I didn't talk to her at the house party. And then we went to a bar all together, like a big group of us. And then I called her Minnie Mouse. And, that was like a line from the book. I'm like, you look like a cute version of Minnie Mouse. And then she was all like, Minnie Mouse, what do you mean? And we ended up like making out like 15 to 30 seconds later because I used another bullshit sort of thing from the book. And then, so my first experience with using these tactics was like, wow, this shit actually works. But then, we hooked up, we had sex, and then I really liked this girl. I thought she was, way out of my league, amazing, beautiful. But then when I followed up with her to try to see her again, she ghosted me. So it was kind of a combination of, wow, this stuff really works. But also, I thought I just needed to kind of use more material. So then I kind of went down this horrible rabbit hole of using more weird stuff, and it got me nowhere. And then luckily 2 or 3 months later, I'm like, all right, this is garbage. I just got lucky, right time, right place with that first sort of encounter. And then that's where I kind of got into more like mainstream personal growth and started working on my insecurities. I was totally insecure. I was a bit overweight, dorky sort of Jewish kid that played golf and didn't spend a lot of time, trying to date or anything like that. So I don't know if that answered the question exactly, but that's how I kind of got into it and luckily found my way out of it, after not too much time.
And what's interesting is that because the game has become the game, and it's all all this stuff is rarely available on the internet. Women can learn about these tactics and identify them in the wild, and then so I've got this listener. I'm going to call her A. What's up, A? Hey, you know who you are. So A was out clubbing one night, and she ends up going home with these two guys to hook up. And after the threesome, the guys admitted that they used pickup tactics to get her into bed. And so she spent the rest of the night learning all these moves from them. And so then, she would go out, and when dudes would try to do these things to her, she'd call them out on it.
Right.
Like, "Oh, sweet neg, bro," or
Right.
or "Hey, yeah, you don't have to lean that close. I know you're trying to hit that 45-degree angle, but you can go back a little bit." So there's also, just because people knowing about it and it not being a secret anymore, women can now learn from all of it and defend against it. But what got you down the pickup rabbit hole in the beginning? What was your experience level when you found it, and what were you hoping to find?
I was almost graduated from university, so I was 22 years old. And, I lost my virginity when I was 18, had my first girlfriend as like a senior in high school, and then had basically one girlfriend after that almost throughout the entire college experience. So maybe, before I was introduced, I'd probably slept with 6 or 7 women, but I'd go out to the bars all the time. Like, me and my buddies, we lived in Pacific Beach, and every Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday night, we'd go out to the bars, and we'd all just get drunk and talk about like girls, or talk about talking to girls, but no one would ever approach girls, and no one would ever really do anything about it. But the guys I was hanging out with were these really good looking, tall, chiseled surfer dudes. Girls would hit on them all the time. They'd bring girls home, and I wouldn't, and I'd hear them having sex in the room next to me because they were my roommates. And so I was just bombarded a lot with these like unrealistic, because that doesn't happen for most guys, but in my universe it was. Like, I was the only one of my friends who wouldn't just like randomly go out and get shit-faced one night, stumble out to the bars, and bring home a girl. So I kind of thought that was normal. So when I came across this stuff to the promises were ridiculous. Like, go out to any bar and pull home the hottest girl. I'm like, oh, this is cool because I can compete with my friends and I don't have to feel like the loser who doesn't get a girl. So that was kind of my motivation at the beginning, was to almost just like not be the loser amongst my roommates and friends. But I was always kind of like the more shy, sort of dorky kid in high school and college. I was cool. I wasn't like the biggest dork or anything, but I always saw the girls I really wanted. I'm like, oh, she's out of my league. I could never like get a girl like that. So I had these issues around like my looks, just my level of confidence. And there were just some girls that I would just meet them and I'd fall apart. Like, I'd get tongue-tied. I wouldn't know what to say. I wouldn't know what to do. And I'd act like this version of me that I was like, I don't even know who that guy is. I don't usually act like that around people around normal people. But when I see these beautiful women, I get weird like that. And, when I was introduced to the pickup stuff, I'm like, okay, this is a way to kind of combat that. This is something I can do that's not this other thing that I default into.
Do you remember what the first thing you learned from pickup was?
It was just a bunch of silly opening lines, like the Mickey Mouse thing, which was a neg. It was this weird way to start kissing a girl by telling her about lions, when they meet each other, they sniff each other's necks, and sniff my neck, and then I would sniff her neck. And it was just these weird sort of like escalation tactics to get physical. There was some stuff like that.
That's kind of brilliant. In an evil kind of way. It is kind of brilliant.
The psychology behind, the pickup stuff, it's just reverse engineered seduction, right? It's like, okay, what happened with a usual seduction? How do we reverse engineer that? And there's kind of like a normal stage with, if you look at how most seductions occur, it's, you start with some small talk and some banter, and that kind of escalates into more meaningful rapport-based conversation. And then the conversation gets a little bit deeper and more intimate, and then touching, starts to happen a bit more. And then, you go somewhere else. Your friends kind of disappear from the scene. You're together alone, and then you go back and you find somewhere to have sex. And so really the pickup guys just reverse engineered that process and added in some sort of check marks and checkpoints along the way. and they're teaching people to do that. But the problem is with anything, it's like you can use that for good or you could use that for evil. And the approach that you take with that can be, again, it could be like, I was never a guy who I always loved women. Like I grew up with sisters and very close with my mom. So I have never had any sort of like anger or any like bad feelings or resentment or anything like that. So when I learned about it, I was just like, oh, this is great. I could connect with more women. Of course, I wanted to get laid more often too. That's cool. But it was more in the desire to like improve myself and give myself a chance to meet a higher quality companion. Whereas a lot of these guys, like these incels or guys you hear about that go out and like, do the pickup stuff and they shoot and kill a bunch of people. Like, I think those guys are obviously, they have a lot of sort of mental shit going on and they want to, get back at women and fuck their way through their shortcomings. And obviously you can use these tactics in a way that is super unhealthy like that if you wanted to.
Yeah. And in seeing the success of these tactics, did you start feeling more confident?
Well, in the beginning, that the only time the tactics worked was that first time. The exact.
Oh God, were you a bad pickup artist?
Oh, it's terrible.
Like bad as in not good at it, not bad as in your soul.
With the like the old school pickup stuff with like the negs and the process, like, because it's very analytical, and to succeed at that, it's weird because you have really analytical guys, computer guys, IT guys that are good at those analytical processes, and then they're going to try to use this analytical thing to pick up women. It usually doesn't work for most people. Like most guys who try pickup horribly, miserably fail at it, and they get more weird. And then they put on glasses and fuzzy hats and like light up shit, all the peacocking gear that you've probably heard that term before. Wear crazy stuff so you can spark conversation easier, so you get attention. So, you have these clueless guys and that like don't really know what they're doing and they just are willing to try anything. So that's what I did at first. And I had that one first night success, but after that, I was just failing miserably. I was going out all the time and trying all the tactics and just wasn't getting anywhere. I had a few dates and a few sort of quasi successes, but that was just a function of approaching more women because I was not approaching anyone before that. And that's when I realized I was like, okay, let me take a different approach to this because now my friends who are cool don't want to hang out with me anymore because I'm wearing all this weird shit and I'm bringing around these other weird pickup guys, and my friends are like, they're all kind of like taking me aside, like, Robbie, like, what are you doing with all this stuff? This is a little bit like strange. And they even tried to have like an intervention with me for
a bro intervention.
Yeah. So
what was the bro intervention like?
I mean, it wasn't like a group of them. It was just kind of like one guy at a time over the course of like, 2 or 3 nights being like, stop hanging out with these weird PUA guys. Like they're strange. They're weird. And I was like, yeah, you're right. And, it worked. The intervention worked because I stopped like hanging out with a lot of those guys. And then I found this company that was up in San Francisco that was actually teaching like way more normal stuff. It was still within the personal growth genre, but it was more about confidence and body language and public speaking and, all the things that you would do to make yourself just more confident in general and to carry yourself with more of a power and a presence. And that's when I got into more of the, like, I went real down the rabbit hole on like the kind of the spiritual personal growth stuff. I moved up to Venice Beach, which is like the epicenter of that sort of, woo.
Is that like where all the cults are?
Exactly.
Okay.
I got involved with a quasi cult even.
What? Wait, hold on. Which one? Can I Google that?
It was the one I talked to you about on my podcast the other night, where we would all like do these movement exercises on rollerblades.
Right.
Yes. It was just like, it was so weird, man. So I go to my friends, like, you have to come, you got to meet this guy named Carl.
Yeah,
And
you always got to meet a guy and they're just going to call him by the first name. It's always like, no, 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 you don't understand. Jim, he's like a thoughtful, mind opening. You got to come meet
Yep.
Jim. Bring your checkbook. Come bring your checkbook. But yeah, come.
he's like, exactly. And when you go, you can pay what you thought it was worth. There's no price on it. I'm like, okay.
There is a price on the stairs when you don't.
Exactly. So I go to this room and there's like 20 people sitting in a circle. This house in Santa Monica, carpeted, like, older sort of like Indian style motif, very sort of kind of like a yoga feel to it. And there's this 65-year-old dude in the circle, and he's having people like go like this with their hands or like move in different directions. And then the other people in the circle were kind of listening to his like, when you're doing like this, it's making you look like you want us to give you everything. That's what your energy is saying. Do you guys all see that? And everyone's like, yeah, Carl, we see that. And
nobody wants to be the one person who doesn't see it.
Exactly.
Be like, hi, can I have an explanation? No, you can get the fuck out of my house, though. Okay, Carl.
So yeah, it was a crazy cult.
How long did you stay up at the cult?
About 9 months.
9 months? And for context, like, how long did you do the PUA for?
Maybe 3 or 4 months.
Wow. So, like, your friends must have been all like, is Robbie still wearing that stupid vest? We got to talk to him. And then someone says, nah, I think he's rollerblading upstate with an old man. It's like, yikes. Can we get him that vest back?
They felt like they lost me for a while because, they did.
Yeah.
It was under the guise of like business training. And at that point, I had started a blog and I was blogging about all of my sort of adventures. And I had even picked up my first sort of dating coaching client. I wasn't trying to become a dating coach, but I was blogging about what I was doing. And this guy from Scotland, he was like, hey, I really like your stories. I like what you're doing. Can you coach me? And I'm like, yeah, I guess if you want to pay me to do that, sure, no problem.
Sure.
And so I was trying to build this coaching business at the same time. I had a normal finance job as well. But then after kind of being in this weird sort of culty process, and seeing how like just entrepreneurial stuff kind of worked, it did have a positive impact on a whole, because it wasn't like a dangerous cult. It was just the sort of like, there was a lot of feedback on how you were being, and the sort of like, I don't know, the weird, just the, like if you were being in any way that people didn't like, they would tell you. Uh-huh. And I did have a few different like personas. Like I had this sort of Joe Cool thing that they called, or I had this lazy sort of personality to myself, and people called me out on that shit. And I kind of stopped doing the lazy thing and the Joe Cool inauthentic thing. So it did have a very positive impact. It dusted my bank account, unfortunately. It definitely wasn't worth the probably $50,000 I paid. But what? Yes. So
$50,000?
$50,000. Crazy
Robbie.
Shit. I know.
Robbie. Oh no. How did you get out of it?
I got out of it when I had a girlfriend at the time, and she was in the intensive like 6-month program with me.
Okay.
And she was trying to become an actress. And Carl had another woman come through who was also trying to be an actress. But this person happened to be like the step, or she married into the family of Ron Howard.
Okay.
So Carl said to this woman, the energy you're portraying, you're going to be a big Hollywood star for sure. Like I can just see it right here, right there. Like you've got everything that you need to make, that you need to become a star.
What a grifter line to say.
And
that's pickup. We're not trying to fuck anybody at the end, but that's still pickup. That's entrepreneurial pickup.
Yeah. And when I heard that, I'm like, dude, nepotism is the biggest driver of Hollywood. Of course she's going to be a star. She's marrying into the family of Ron Howard. He's the biggest fucking Hollywood producer there is. Like, you're full of shit, man. And then I just left. I'm like, this is fucking.
Wow. Well, good for you that you were able to identify the bullshit, because with the pickup, you need your friends to point it out to you. So,
Yeah.
So how did you get into the work of being a dating coach? Like, what was Inner Confidence about when you launched that?
So Inner Confidence was kind of a reaction against the pickup stuff. It was essentially like become more confident, improve with women without being weird. And at the time, there really there weren't really any like mainstream dating coaches. It was only pickup companies. This was back in like 2007, 2008. I started Inner Confidence 2008. And so we were one of the first sort of trying to be normal dating coaching companies. We were running meetups up in LA, and we would that's where we got all our clients from Meetup and from our website, just random like Google searches. So we'd have these little meetups, guys would come in, and I would just show them like an easy way to stop a girl on the sidewalk or stop a girl at a Starbucks or a dry cleaners and try to have a conversation where you walk away with her contact info and take her on a date. And to do that in a way that wasn't creepy or weird, so you can, actually get out there and have some opportunities, because most guys were trying to use online dating and failing with it. A lot of the guys that came to those meetups their fashion was horrible, their hygiene was bad. It was like a lot of just basic stuff that they didn't understand that they were failing at. But they didn't have buddies to tell them, and most of them were IT guys. So I kind of found this niche market of internet guys in their like late 20s to mid 40s who had kind of like skipped that stage where you're supposed to be social and cool and normal and kind of date. Most of them were just kind of busy trying to make money or playing video games or doing things that weren't very social. And then they'd get to their late 20s, early 30s, all their friends were getting married, and they were like, shit, I haven't had a date in a while. I haven't really given a shit because I've been playing so many video games. I don't really care, but I should probably get this area of my life handled, or I'm going to be lonely and miserable when I'm older. So those are the type of guys that were showing up to the meetups and kind of coming on my site. And yeah, that's kind of how the business started.
Because to me, like, there's some sort of audacity, and I don't mean this in any sort of insulting way, but there's an audacity and confidence one has to have to be a dating coach, or to tell a bunch of men, I'm going to show you the way. Like, when you started Inner Confidence, did you ever have any imposter syndrome?
When I started it, no, because I'd already been like 3 years pretty heavy. Like, I'd gone through the pickup stuff. I did all the crazy personal growth stuff. I had done other like public speaking sort of courses. I was just read a gazillion books on confidence. I went through Landmark Education, if you've heard about that before. That's another
I've heard of Landmark. Well, I shouldn't say heard of. I should say I've had someone try to pressure me into Landmark before.
Another cult. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Another cult.
Not as like hardcore as this other cult, but Landmark only gets people through high pressure friends taking other friends, because they don't advertise, they don't market. And but just like any cult, there's some good things in there, and there's a lot of obviously negative things too. But through all of that training, I learned like, okay, there's a lot of people who like who am I to tell a guy like they suck at dating? But if they're coming to me, and even if they're only one stage below me, they have something to learn. Almost they could learn the most from someone just one stage above them. So that was how I kind of got over that little bit of imposter syndrome that I had in the beginning. And yeah, in the beginning, I really had no business like teaching this stuff. I wasn't a guy who was going out and crushing it, and like, I wasn't like a smooth operator or an amazing pickup artist. But to the guys I was working with, it was, I was exactly what they needed, because they just needed like a big brother type to show them like, it's okay to go out and get rejected. It's okay to go out and approach a girl and fail. Like, you're going to be a better guy for it. She's going to be she might be like slightly annoyed that you came and like bothered her, but you're not doing anything weird or sleazy or negative. She's going to feel complimented at the very least, and you're going to walk away feeling a little bit more, alive and empowered. And that's kind of the weird thing. It's like the biggest thing about the whole pickup thing, it's literally just getting over the fear of rejection and approaching women. When you get out there and for me, like approaching a random girl that I didn't know was the scariest thing I could possibly think of doing. And I've had I've talked to Navy SEALs on my podcast who have said, I would rather like go into a secret ops mission getting fired at with lead bullets than go up to a random girl and approach her. Like the latter is more scary. And just the experience of just doing that, getting rejected a bunch of times, but then like watching women light up and smile when you go over and you give them a compliment or you hit on them, and then going on dates and having relationships form from that. It's like, it's just a weird sort of rite of passage for a lot of guys. And it's super transformative or transformational. And that's kind of the main thing that happens when I work with my clients is they're willing to do that, and that experience changes them a lot. And then they realize dating is just a game. Dating is a numbers game. If I go out and I put myself in front of more women, I'm going to have more success, because the vast majority of guys just aren't putting themselves out there enough. They're relying on online dating. They're not getting anywhere with that because, to succeed with online dating, it's very looks based.
Yeah, but and there is this thing though, and I hear this with dating coaches and the concept of putting yourself out there. And I do think it is valuable for one's self-esteem if the approach is where your block is at. However, and this came up in my interview with Connell Barrett a few months ago, he's another dating coach, I think that's good for them and their self-improvement to approach women in a respectful way. In a vacuum, sure. However, there could be more conscientiousness about her, in as much as, we're thinking about her as one individual. Oh, so long as I approach her respectfully and not a creepy way, et cetera, fair game. That's a good place to start. But now, what if she's not one lowercase w woman, but rather she is part of capital W women who frequently get interrupted in respectful ways that in any one instance are fine, but in totality are really fucking annoying because it's 100 respectful guys interrupting her day. Like, for example, Connell said he might bring a client out to a park on a nice day, and he'll encourage the guy to go introduce himself in the park to a woman who is like reading her book alone.
It could be street harassment, basically,
Right.
Yeah.
Each individual instance is fine, and if she seems not interested, you leave. That's all well and good for Jim approaching Cheryl, but when there are 50 Jims in a day interrupting Cheryl trying to read her fucking book, that's where we want to view what we're doing in a vacuum, as if we're not part of capital M men who have historically treated capital W women in a certain way. Yeah, what we do individually is what it is, but it happens in a context that I think the dating coach world could be a little more mindful of.
Yeah.
Because right now, we're improving this guy's self-esteem at the cost of a woman who doesn't want to be bothered. I don't mean to say that like you can't approach women in public, but that there's a level above just being respectful yourself that involves thinking about the context and how she might perceive the interaction.
Right.
Yeah, this would be a challenge for me to approach this woman and say hello, but does she look like she wants to be talked to? Is this the same as if we're at a bar where it's fair game?
Well, that's where I did most of my approaches, was at bars and clubs and that sort of thing. I've definitely done a ton of, daylight style, out and about, park bench, grocery store, whatever you name it, approaches as well. But and there is a problem. Like, you go to some of these countries like Serbia and like Belgrade, for example, there's so many pickup artists taking their clients to Belgrade and hitting on the locals there, that Belgrade has become this like pickup capital, like day gamers have ruined Belgrade.
I'm a dumb American. Where is Belgrade?
It's in Serbia. Belgrade, Serbia. Yeah, and
Wait,
like
Belgrade's
literally,
in Serbia,
yeah.
right?
It's
Serbia's
Serbia's
in Russia.
former Yugoslavia.
Okay, cool.
So,
I'm working on
so
it. Our schools are terrible. You know this.
it's actually where World War One started. It's where the Archduke Franz Ferdinand was like killed
Yeah, he
by
got
the Germans.
assassinated. See, I knew
Exactly.
that one.
Yep. So lots of history there, and a lot of day gamers, unfortunately. And no, literally, like there's a lot of dating coaches and pickup artists. It's a fine line, of course, that are teaching guys to go out and do day game. And a lot of these guys are very clueless, and the coaching isn't very good. So there's just turning guys into like street harassers, which is annoying, and it's not good for women, and it's not good for a city. So there's definitely that aspect to it. What I try to tell my clients is like, okay, there's so many ways you can meet women. You should kind of find the ones that work for you. I love going to bars. I love being out and going out with my friends. And exactly, when you go out to a bar, it's totally fair game. Like people go to bars to meet other people or to be social at least, So and when it comes to meeting women in public, like you should be able to kind of read those signals and be able to at least like, if she's on her phone and she's walking a million miles per hour, like sure, you could technically go and do that approach, but odds are it's not going to go very well. She's busy. She's on a mission. You're just going to be annoying. So it's probably going to be annoying for her. It's probably not going to work for you. There's better opportunities. And if you can understand that sort of social protocol, you're way more apt to pick up on the right time to do it and the wrong time to do it. So it takes, and that's really the biggest part of the training is helping guys develop this social awareness muscle to understand social protocol better. And that's what kind of, and you mentioned this on our interview, it's like the bar is low, right? For guys out there. It's really fucking low. And if you have the social awareness to just kind of like see some of these things and you can either communicate that or sub-communicate that on when you're out with women or when you're interacting with them, they're gonna be like, okay, this guy kind of gets it. This guy's cool. He's not totally oblivious to these things that are very obvious to most women because it's more or less like a sixth sense or something that they kind of develop growing up more so than men do. And we're, typically more busy doing sort of video gaming or sports, not necessarily men versus women, but masculine, feminine energy, I could say. And a lot of the guys that come to me and a lot of guys in general that struggle, they're just not really thinking on those terms. They're not thinking about like, what's going on in her mind right now? What is she probably thinking about? They're not really listening when they're on dates. There's all this data that's coming at them that they're just not even, it's just whizzing by their head and they're not picking it up.
So now, has your fiance ever like chimed in about your dating strategies and you were like, oh yeah, you have a good point there. Have you learned anything from her?
I've learned so much stuff from women over, because I've had a lot of long-term relationships. I think I've had, since I got into this whole journey at like age 22, 23, I'm 39 now. And I've had, I think, 4 3-year plus relationships. And all of those women have worked with me and helped me coach or, work closely alongside of me for many years and been like integral in the business. My fiance now is super integral. She's, she's a model and she's like a blogger. She's big on TikTok and she helps guys with their Instagram and helps them with their fashion and their persona. She essentially helps them with their kind of outer confidence, you could say. So I've learned, I mean, when we first met, she went through my Instagram and she's like, oh my God, you're like the biggest fuckboy idiot ever. Which I kind of was at the time, but she's like, this picture is horrible. You're posing horribly in this picture. Like I learned a shitload from, and I was already like a very established guy, like dating coach giving advice on other guys' Instagrams. I'm like, wow, I really missed the mark on this. So, and I've dated some really interesting women. One of them is now like a holistic sex coach. And she was actually the one who introduced me to Landmark. So she's definitely part of like
of course,
this sort of like woo woo world, you could say. Um, but yeah, I mean, when I do coach guys, one of the big things I do is I put them on video, and I bring in women, and I have them interact with women on video. And I have them occasionally go out and approach, and I film it, and then we look at the video, and they get to see how they're being, and that's a very crazy and like uncomfortable experience for guys, because
Yeah.
they've never actually seen themselves like in action or interacting in this way before, and like guys hate to watch it. Like, I'm sure when you first started podcasting, you probably hated the sound of your voice, you hated how you looked on video. At least I did. It's tough. It's very confronting.
Now, you alluded to this earlier when you were like that most of the people who stay in pickup are the guys with the ridiculous hats and shit. What do you think it is about that there are so many male dating coaches who started in pickup and then evolved out of it?
Like, why does that happen?
Well, I guess one, do you believe that is a trend that is happening? And two, if so, why?
Yeah, I think the average guy is, again, what you talked about yesterday. They're clicking around online, right? How to run a date, how to get a girlfriend, right? They're googling these things, and they're landing on whatever they land on. For me, that was a website called, well, first it was the game, then it was a website called Pickup 101, I was just like bombarded with these tactics. And I think most guys, they're gonna see the tactics and like, okay, these seem good. I'll try these out. They'll use them, and then they'll realize, all right, these are kind of tactical. I feel a little bit weird doing this stuff, and then they'll find their way to stuff that's more authentic and more normal. And I think most people have that at least base level awareness when they're being authentic versus when they're trying to be something that they're not. And hopefully they get steered away by that. I think some people, maybe because they lack a moral compass, or maybe they have a lot of negative experiences, like don't have that fork in the road, and they stay with this pickup stuff, and then they get super red pill and very negative, and then they end up like that kid at UCSB, like killing women, right? Like that's like the evil, nasty, toxic side of where pickup can take you. So but I do think the majority of guys, because most of the clients I get are guys who, they're like, I found your podcast. You're like one of the only normal guys who's teaching this stuff. And I just felt like I could be normal too and succeed. And I like that. And that's why I came to you, because you're not weird. You're not like, some like celebrity or some, they're like, you're just like an everyday guy who is saying like intelligent stuff that I could relate to. And I like your podcast, so I want to,
Do you think a lot of guys come to you also having landed in pickup and then trying to find something better?
Oh yeah, most of them have studied some sort of pickup. Like, I'll get a few now more so than before when my podcast wasn't as popular. Like now I'll get guys who haven't studied any pickup and they just found the podcast, but up until about a year ago, there was zero guys who would come to me that hadn't studied some sort of pickup stuff or bought in some sort of ebook or some sort of like how to get better with chicks product prior.
Yeah.
So, I mean, luckily the stuff out there I feel is getting better. Like the majority of stuff that you'll find these days, I think like the cream rises to the top. There's some great books, like Mark Manson, who wrote The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck. And he's a former pickup artist, and his stuff is great. He wrote a book called Models, which is like attract women through honesty, and that's a really solid book. And the more mainstream dating coaches are, it's more scientific now. It's more based on like evolutionary biology, and it's a lot. It's not these tactics. It's more about like, why are people attracted to each other? What are the signals that you need to put out? How do you need to change who you're being to attract the opposite sex? And it's great for both men and women. So I've even had some female clients over the years as well who've either found my podcast or saw me at an event and they're like, oh, can you teach me? I'm like, sure, of course.
Oh, Robbie. Well, thank you for making some time to chatting with me. I would love to talk again. If you're ever in New York, would love to just talk next level stuff with you at a bar or do another podcast. But for now, where can people find you, find your work, find your podcast, do all the plugs, which in Ukraine look differently than mine?
Yeah, so you can go to my site. It's innerconfidence.com. And I also have the podcast there. It's called The Leverage Podcast. You just click on the podcast link. Also connect with me on Instagram. It's Instagram.com/Robbie, ROBBIE _ Kramer, KRAMER. Feel free to DM me. I answer everything. And, come listen to the episode where I had Billy on. It was awesome. It'll be airing soon. So, yeah, man. And I'd love to come back. I'd love to have you back on the show, too, because I feel like we could talk for hours and hours and just keep.
Absolutely. Let's talk again in the new year.
For sure.
All right, man. You take care. And why don't you go ahead and say goodbye to everybody?
Yeah. Thanks, Billy. And everyone listening, thanks so much for listening to me blabble on. I hope you learned something from us.
Don't forget to check out my episode of the Leverage Podcast. I'll have a link in the show notes. Also in the show notes, you'll see links to both of our social media. We love hearing from you. Like every podcast you listen to, I promise you, unless you're like Joe Rogan or Mark Maron or NPR, they do not get enough tweets tagging them. We don't get enough sharing in the story and tagging us. You can never comment too much. We love hearing that feedback. So shoot us tweets, shoot us Instagram stories, shout out, shoot us whatever. You can even shoot me an email. I read all my own emails. There's no assistant you're going to be talking to. It's just me. You can always shoot me an email with your comments, your questions, your criticisms. Send any and all of it over to manwhorepod@gmail.com. Now, I clipped out about the last 15 minutes of our conversation, and I'm putting it out tomorrow exclusively on Patreon. Yeah, because that part of the conversation really tackled authenticity in dating. That's going to be out tomorrow for all of my $5 and up fan whores. And again, you can become a member today at patreon.com/manwhorepodcast. Next week, I have got on Eve Rickert. Yeah, if you don't know, Eve is the co-author of More Than Two. Eve is also the ex-wife of a certain guest from last year, Franklin Vo. So if you remember that two-parter, we got her side of it now. Kinda. We tried to stay away from Franklin as much as possible, but it's kind of difficult. Really cool conversation, and I'm really excited to share that one. Really cool, like several weeks of good shows. Yeah, low-key, there are sometimes bad shows, but I don't tell you that they're bad shows. We got like a good string of shows. I'm really happy about it. I'm not happy about other things in my life. I'm probably going to turn off this mic and go cry, but while I'm doing that, you should go off and stay slutty. But don't weaponize that shit. Are you looking to start a podcast? Want to use audio as a marketing tool for your small business? Enjoy free credits when you use my promo code BILLY at Libsyn.com. That's Libsyn, Libsyn.com, or click the link in the show notes.